All right, it is official. April 29th, 2025. We can officially mark the start of NBA trade machine season for this year in the NBA. It always happens sometime around this year. It's, I think, a yearly tradition. Whether you like it or not, it's part of the NBA calendar. It's not to be confused with the trade machine season in February, where everyone gets ready for the trade deadline, throws up all their crazy trades. The trade machine season that I'm talking about starts typically at the end of April, whenever the first superstar, the first big name falls in the playoffs. Everyone goes on trade machine, starts to throw out their ideas. So we saw that happen yesterday, April 29th, when the Bucks lost somehow in Game 5 to the Pacers. They are now eliminated. And so now, over the last 24 hours, we've seen just tons of rumors, tons of potential trade ideas of where Giannis could get traded. And typically, I don't like to go through those rumors. I don't like to be one of those people that just throws out trade ideas once a player loses, once I think they're in a bad situation. But we all know that this situation with Giannis is different. And so as I was preparing this, watching the Bucks just somehow blow Game 5, I knew whether they won or lost that game, they were probably going to lose at some point to Indiana. And then the real conversation would start, is will Giannis get traded? And so I wanted to go through a comprehensive look at every possibility for the Bucks, both from the Bucks standpoint, from Giannis's standpoint, and of course from the other team's perspective. So we're going to go through every team, say whether or not they will actually trade for him. We're going to throw up the trade machine. Spoiler alert, I got 17 trades that we are going to go through. So it's going to be a lot, but it's Giannis. He's a top 3 player in the league. He is in his prime. If he actually gets traded, or if he wants to get traded, it's going to go crazy. So I think this is worth going through. So we're going to go through all of it. If you enjoy any part of it, make sure to like, subscribe, all of that. I got plenty more coming on this channel over the summer. We're going to unveil my new trade value list. We're going to do a little mock expansion draft, along with some other things in the NFL, the MLB, the WNBA that's getting started. So if you like this, if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. Plenty more coming over the next few months. When we start to think of a Giannis trade, really the big question is, are the Bucks actually going to trade him? I could say no, and the video would end right now, but I do think they have to consider just kind of the trajectory of their roster. Are they actually going to be able to win another championship with Giannis? Because if there's a slight chance that they think they can, you don't trade him. And that's what I've seen a lot of people say. You don't trade a top 3 player in the league, and that's what Giannis is. You are trying to find somebody like Giannis, but you also don't want to kind of repeat these last couple years and then lose Giannis for nothing or lose Giannis for way less than he's worth right now, because this is probably the peak of what you could trade him for. And so those conversations are going to start in Milwaukee. The other big question is whether or not Giannis is going to ask out, because unless Milwaukee has a real conversation with Giannis and says, hey, we think we should trade you, if Giannis doesn't agree, and if he's like, no, I want to be in Milwaukee, I love this city, I love this team, I'm going to be a part of it, you just don't trade him. You don't trade superstars that want to be there unless you're Nico Harrison. But other than that, you don't trade superstars who want to be there. So if Giannis says he wants to stay, which there's been lots of back and forth on whether that might be the case, that could just squash all these rumors. And we could be talking about this for nothing. But if Giannis is like, yeah, I don't really love where this team is headed, if the Bucks are like, yeah, our trajectory is not great, then we can commence with all the trade stuff. So we're going to assume that's going to be the case. I would put it about 50-50. I'm not necessarily expecting Giannis to be traded, but if we get an announcement in a couple months that says Giannis has requested out, I also wouldn't be shocked. With that being said, we got to go through what a trade might look like. To me, there are 4 criteria that you have to look at when trying to come up with a Giannis trade. And you got to think about it, again, from the Bucks' perspective, from Giannis's perspective, from the other team's perspective. And so to me, I've boiled it down to 4 criteria. The first one is really the most important, and you got to at least pass this criteria. And that's, is the team in a better shape than the Bucks are right now? As I've said, the Bucks are really not a good roster right now. There's really no sense in trading Giannis to a team that has a worse roster. That's just not going to happen. So that's pretty clear, number 1. Number 2 is, does Giannis want to go there? Because again, this isn't the case where the Bucks are just going to kind of stab him in the back and say, hey, we're sending you to X place. Giannis has to approve it. He doesn't have a no trade clause. He's not Bradley Beal. But he does have a no trade clause in the sense of, I would assume the Bucks would work with him. Does he want a big market? Does he want a smaller market? There's been a lot of rumors on both sides. There's been rumors that he likes Miami or New York. There's been rumors maybe he likes Milwaukee. Maybe he likes being a part of a smaller market, being kind of the face of a city. So we don't really know what he wants. And so I'm not going to lean strongly one way or the other, but that's going to be a big consideration. Criteria number 3 is there a possible trade that works? And we're going to go through it. There's a couple teams that maybe would be options in theory. They would pass the first 2 on this list, but you got to be able to make a trade. And I don't necessarily mean a trade that makes sense for both teams. I mean, can you literally put a trade together based on all the CBA restrictions, all the restrictions on what you can trade, whether it's draft picks, whether it's players and the second apron and all the stuff that we'll try to go through. Is it just possible at all to make a trade? That's criteria number 3. And then 4, if you've passed those first 3 criteria, does the team have pieces that the Bucks would want? Because unless Giannis says, I want to get traded and I only want to get traded to X team, the Bucks are going to try to work with Giannis, find a team that works for both Giannis and the Bucks. Because the Bucks, they're not going to sell low. They're not going to just give him away. They have to have pieces that the Bucks want. Now, what do the Bucks want? Depends. Are they going to retool? Are they just going to tank? They don't have their own draft picks, so I can't imagine they're going to tank unless maybe they get their draft picks back. So that's a consideration, and that's something we'll look at when we look at every team. So those are the 4 criteria. We're going to throw up every team now on the screen, and we're going to kind of start to eliminate some of these teams because not every team is worth throwing up the trade machine for. Some of these teams just don't fit the criteria. Let's go through the first criteria that I had. Are you in better shape than the Bucks right now? There are a few teams that, no, they are not in better shape. Maybe long-term, but do you have pieces right now that Giannis could compete with? Some teams, no. That's the Jazz. That's the Hornets. That's the Wizards, the Raptors, a lot of those tanking teams. Giannis isn't getting traded there. 2 other teams, you may be a little bit surprised, but I've talked about them before, just how disappointing they were. That's the 76ers and the Suns. Those 2 teams, you can make an argument maybe for the 76ers, but again, Giannis in a trade, probably have to give up Maxey. Giannis, Embiid, Paul George, I don't want to see it. I'm not going to even consider it. Same thing with the Suns. You'd probably have to give up Booker, Durant, Beal, Giannis. I don't want to think about it. So those 2 teams, not in good shape. I'm going to put them on the list. So that gets rid of 6 teams. So let's move to the second criteria. Would Giannis actually want to go there? So these teams pass the first criteria. I don't know if Giannis would necessarily want to go there. I have 4 teams. I have the Pelicans, the Trailblazers, the Kings, and the Bulls. All 4 of those teams, I think, have decent rosters. They have some fun pieces, whether it be young pieces, whether it be some veterans. But I really just don't see Giannis wanting to go there. It would probably be somewhat of a lateral move from Milwaukee. Again, you could argue their rosters might be slightly better. But is Giannis actually going to win a title on one of those teams? Probably not. I just don't see it happening. So we'll eliminate those 4. And then the third criteria is, what's the trade? Can you come up with any sort of trade that works, makes sense in any capacity? I got 2 teams that I'm going to eliminate. If you want to put them in the trade machine, try to come up with something that works, go ahead. But I have the Nuggets and the Celtics that I don't think are going to pass this criteria. The Nuggets, Jamal Murray would probably have to be in the trade just to get everything to work. Even then, it's a weird fit. I'm not even going to go into it. If you want to throw up something, go ahead. And then the same thing with the Celtics. The Celtics can't aggregate players in a trade because they are over the second apron. So it's basically going to be maybe a Jaylen Brown and picks for Giannis. Now, you could say that's technically a trade that works. And yes, I will throw that as kind of a secondary option, ignoring all the 17 other trades I'm going to give you. If that happened, 1, I would be shocked. I think that would be like a Luka AD type trade, just in terms of shock value. And 2, I think the Celtics would have to lose pretty early on in this playoffs. And it wasn't round 1. They beat the Magic. So if they lose in round 2, maybe they would consider that. I don't know if the Bucks would want Jaylen Brown back in picks. I don't know. So I'm going to say that's not a trade that makes sense. They technically have trades maybe, but I don't want to consider them. So those two don't pass that third criteria. And so to my count, then that leaves 17 teams that are left. And 17 teams that, for the most part, pass the first three criteria. A couple teams, I think they're exempt from some of these criteria, and we will talk about them in a second. But for the most part, 17 teams that I think have a reasonable shot and a reasonable offer to the Bucks. So then the question is, what do the Bucks want? How would Giannis fit on these teams? So let's go through them one by one. We'll put up some trade machine stuff. We'll go through it. One big caveat before we start, before everyone comes in and says, oh, this trade doesn't make sense. The Bucks wouldn't do this. The other team wouldn't do this. To me, this is what a reasonable offer would be for Giannis for each of these teams. Is it 100% the trade? No. I think for a lot of these, you could go 15%, probably either way. Maybe some of them might be slightly more. Some of them might be slightly less. But for the most part, I'm going to put up 17 trade concepts. If you want to take out little pieces here and there, you can. Nobody's going to love every single one of these. But this is what I think a reasonable offer could look like for both teams when we're talking Giannis. And don't forget how good Giannis is. He is in his prime. He is going to get a ton back. So with that in mind, let's go through all the teams. We'll go alphabetically, starting with Atlanta. Atlanta is a fun one. And the trade I have up here is Jalen Johnson, Zachary Richache, the past number 1 overall pick, and 3 first-round picks. Again, like I mentioned, if you want it to be 4 or 5, if you want it to be 2 first-round picks, go ahead. But as a concept, I like this offer for the Hawks. How would Giannis fit? I mean, it's Trae and Giannis. Would they necessarily win the title? I don't really know. But Trae, Dyson Daniels, Giannis, Onyeka Okongwu, it's not a bad group. And I think especially Trae and Giannis, they kind of fit what each other needs. Giannis needs a guard to help set him up. Trae needs someone like Giannis, whether it's rolls, whether it's lobs. And I think Giannis is, I say this lightly because I don't want people to go crazy. I do love Jalen Johnson. I think Giannis is just an elevated version of Jalen Johnson. Now, a probably much elevated version of Jalen Johnson. But when Jalen Johnson was healthy, the Hawks were great. So if they're able to turn him and Richache, who I think is pretty valuable. Some people didn't love him. I know it was a really bad draft class, but I thought he looked good. And so the fact that the Bucks could trade Giannis into a much less, but still sort of enticing player that's similar to him in Jalen Johnson, turn him into a past number 1 overall pick, who I think has a lot of potential, and of course draft picks, not a bad return. And so again, we'll talk about all of these in total, which ones I like, but this is the one for the Hawks. It's actually one of my favorite ones. Will he actually go to Atlanta? We'll see, but this is the trade for the Hawks. Next team up, alphabetically at least, is Brooklyn. And this is one of the teams that you could probably say gets exempt from some of the criteria I mentioned. They are not in a good spot for Giannis. They are not in a spot, at least roster-wise, to compete right away. But I think they get an exemption because they are in New York. Giannis, rumor has it that he likes New York, so we're going to exempt them from that. We are going to put them on the list. The trade I have up is Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, and just a ton of draft picks. That's really what the Nets could offer. Yes, Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, they are nice pieces. They are solid trade pieces. Bucks, if they wanted to, they could reroute those two for even more draft picks. And so if the Bucks just want to tank, this is probably the offer. And if Giannis says, hey, I want to go to New York, this might be the offer you get. It's going to be Claxton, Cam Johnson, you can throw in Cam Thomas as well, and a ton of draft picks. Is that the right decision? We'll talk about it, but that's the offer for the Nets. The Cavs are the next one, and they're an interesting team because I don't think the Cavs would just automatically do this deal. I don't think they are really considering Giannis at all right now. They're obviously hoping they go deep in the playoffs. But I think if they maybe exit early, they already blew out the Heat, so they are on to round 2. But if they lose maybe in round 2, maybe if they don't make the finals, I think it's at least a conversation in Cleveland. And the trade that I have up is certainly a lot, and it would certainly change their team quite a bit. But to trade Darius Garland, Jared Allen, however many first-round picks it takes, to pair Giannis with Donovan Mitchell, with Evan Mobley, you'd still have DeAndre Hunter, potentially if they re-sign Ty Jerome. That's a trade that I think Cleveland would have to seriously consider. It would be a big swing, but I think it's a swing they would need to take. From the Bucks perspective, this is more on the side of if they want to retool. And if they're like, hey, we don't have our draft picks, there's no sense in tanking, let's get Jared Allen. Let's get Darius Garland. Let's put them with whoever else you like on the Bucks roster, whether it's Bobby Portis, whether it's AJ Green, whoever, and say, hey, these two have been together. They know how to play. They will make us a good team. And you pair them with some other pieces. That's a good kind of retooling for the Bucks. It's an interesting trade. It's a trade that would certainly be a big swing for both teams, but I don't hate it on either side. Next up is another Eastern Conference team, and that's the Detroit Pistons. Trade I have up on the screen gives the Bucks Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, get some contracts in there, and then 3 first-round picks. This might be a trade. You might need a few more picks if you're the Bucks. Depends on really how high they are on both Duren and Ivey. This is definitely a more tanking, kind of get some good young players. If the Bucks are high on Duren, I'm high on Duren. I think he could still be an elite center. If they like Jaden Ivey, they want to get him in a new situation. This is a trade that might work for the Bucks. This might be a little bit weaker of an offer compared to the others, but something that they could consider. From the Pistons side, it would be a lot more exciting. And just selfishly, if I could see Cade and Giannis together, who are 2 of my favorite players right now in the league, that would be a lot of fun. And you pair those 2 with Asar Thompson, if he's not in the trade, that would be a really fun team. And I know Giannis has said in the past, he does not want to play in Detroit. And whether that's just him talking about a current rival, whether that's him talking about the city or past teams or whatever, yes, Giannis would actually have to want to go there. But him and Cade would be quite a duo. Not just now, but for the next 5, 6, 7 years. So is there a deal that the Bucks would get enough back? Maybe, maybe not. But it would be a really fun duo in Detroit. So I had to put him up there. Maybe they can get something done. Next up is Golden State. I threw up the trade. It's going to be an interesting one. And there's really not many options for the Warriors unless they trade Jimmy Butler. Just from a contract perspective, you got to trade either Steph, Draymond, or Jimmy Butler. They are obviously not going to trade Steph. I can't see the Warriors trading Draymond unless it really came to that. But those 2 are off limits. So then the question is, would they trade Jimmy Butler that soon? Or could they come up with a way to pretty much pile everything else for Giannis? And so if it's not Jimmy Butler, which that would be certainly one trade, this is really the only other trade that would work. And it involves doing a sign and trade with both Kuminga and Gary Payton. Both of those players, I just threw up just some contract for them, however much you have to sign them for. But those 2 got to be involved in a sign and trade. You got to trade Moody. You got to trade Pajemski. You got to trade Jackson Davis, Buddy Hield. Throw in really the only draft pick they can throw in there. It's a lot, and it would decimate the Warriors from a depth perspective. But yet, on the other hand, I don't know why the Bucks would want this. Pajemski seems like a really solid player. Is he ever going to turn into a star? I doubt it, but still a nice piece. Maybe you can get something out of Kuminga. Moody, Jackson Davis, solid pieces, but there's not a ton there. So unless Giannis is like, yep, I want to go to the Warriors, I can't see this happening. But Giannis, Steph, Jimmy Butler, if he stays, that would be a really fun team. So we have to put it out there. I can't imagine it would happen. I think it's almost impossible for it to happen. But after the Luka AD trade, you never know. So we're going to throw it out there. Bucks would probably say no to this. The next team alphabetically is the Houston Rockets. And this is the team that is probably most mocked in a trade machine for Giannis. And that's basically because they have a ton of assets and they really don't have a star to lead them to a title. They have Şengün, they have Jalen Green. Neither of them are really like true superstars. And I don't know if either of them will get there. Şengün, maybe. Jalen Green, maybe. Although I would doubt it. So they need to kind of pile some of their assets together for a superstar. None better, really, than Giannis. There's been a lot of talk on what the trade would be. To me, if I'm the Bucks, I am not trading Giannis unless Şengün or Amen Thompson is involved. I think the way Jalen Green has played this year, you could maybe get away with him being the centerpiece. the number one asset in this deal, but I think it's got to start with either Şengün or Amen Thompson. And if I'm the Rockets, Şengün has been great. He has been a great player for them. He is still young. He still has some more to grow. I am not letting that stop me from getting Giannis. Because in the trade that I have up, yes, it's not just Şengün. There's definitely some other good pieces. Jabari Smith, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason. All three have still a decent amount of potential. But all three have also been slightly disappointing, at least compared to where you thought they could go. Jabari Smith, maybe he turns into more than just a solid playoff rotation player. If not, that's probably what he's going to be. Reed Shepherd, I don't want to say anything bad. He barely played. That's maybe not necessarily his fault, but certainly concerns. His trade value has dropped from year 0 to year 1. And then Tari Eason, a good player, but again, not a headliner. So if I'm the Bucks, you get a lot of pieces. You get Şengün. And if I'm the Rockets, you lose a lot of talent. But if you compare Giannis, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, plus all your other assets that you still have, that's something you have to consider. And so if we're talking realistic options, this is going to be a big one. And there's a reason why it's one of the most common mocks. It's going to be one that we're going to talk about. Next up is the team that just eliminated Giannis and has eliminated the Bucks the last 2 years, and that's the Pacers. And to me, the trade has to start with Pascal Siakam. It'd kind of be a weird fit anyways. Plus, the Bucks would need something back. So I think Siakam, Nembhard, Ben Mathurin, those three probably all have to be involved, plus a bunch of draft picks. But imagine Giannis on the Pacers. Just the speed, having Halliburton to give Giannis so many looks. Yes, I get it would be weird if Giannis joined the team that just beat him. But this isn't a free agency. It's a trade. It's not like Giannis would necessarily just straight up ask to be there. But if we're talking like just fits, this would be one of the best fits and most fun fits, I will say, for Giannis. Him in that offense, providing a little bit extra defense for them. Miles Turner, I think, would be a great kind of center to go along with Giannis. It'd be a fun fit. And then from the Bucks perspective, you get back Siakam, who's a solid player. Nembhard has been really good for Indiana. Benedict Mathurin still has some potential. I think getting him out of Indiana might be a good thing for him. And then some draft picks. Again, maybe not the best, but it's a solid return back for Giannis. Next up, we got to do it. We got to do the Lakers. Yes, they are always going to be in trade talks. And is it out of the realm of possibility? I can't say no anymore after what happened with Luka. Luka, Giannis, LeBron for as long as he continues to play. That would be a lot of fun, and it would be a crazy NBA story. The question, obviously, is do the Lakers have enough? I've put up pretty much almost all that they can offer. Reeves would be the headliner. Rui would be the secondary piece. Throw in Gabe Vincent, Maxi Kleber for some contracts, Dalton Connect, and their first-round pick. That's basically all the Lakers can give. You could maybe throw in Vanderbilt, a couple other role players if you wanted to, switch out some things here and there. But it's not really going to line up with a lot of other offers. So, again, is it going to happen? I can't say no. Because if Giannis turns around and says, hey, I want to play with Luka, I want to go to LA, this might be the trade. So, Bucks fans, not a terrible trade. Reeves, Rui, some solid pieces, but nothing like some of the other trades we've talked about. Next up is Memphis. This trade would obviously center around Jaren Jackson Jr. It's either got to be him or Desmond Bane. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. probably makes a little bit more sense. Get some nice pieces around him. Jalen Wells, been a really solid rookie for them. Zach Edey, same thing. Conchar, nice rotation piece. This wouldn't be the worst return for the Grizzlies. I don't know if it necessarily be the best. Depends on how much they like Triple J. From the Grizzlies' perspective, Ja Morant, if he plays, and Giannis is a very electric duo. And I would seriously consider trying to get Giannis to Memphis. It just might not be a thing he wants to do. But if you get him there, it would be a really fun team around him. Giannis in Memphis's environment could be a lot of fun. Again, it's the question of do you think he's actually going to go to Memphis? I would say no. If Ja Morant was healthy, if he was consistent, maybe he could be persuaded. but he is neither of those things right now. So probably a long shot, but an option for trade. The other team that I think probably gets an exemption from the criteria is the Miami Heat. I don't think they are necessarily in any sort of better position than the Bucks are right now. Could maybe argue it's slightly better, but if you trade what I have up there, and it would have to be Bam Adebayo and a couple more pieces and some first round picks, I don't know if the Heat are that much better than the Bucks are right now. You could say obviously Tyler Hero is certainly going to be better than Lillard, who isn't going to play next year. Other than that, the Heat aren't going to have a ton. But again, it's the Heat. Rumors are he likes Miami. Miami always goes after stars, so we have to consider this. In theory, Giannis with Miami, if they can keep Tyler Hero, they can provide shooting around him. Eric Spoelstra, he would come up with lots of ways to use Giannis. It could work. And it's Miami, so I'm not going to rule it out. From the Bucks' perspective, they'd have to like Bam Adebayo, who again, I think is an example of tearing down from Giannis, even if it's a couple tiers down. But you get a nice young piece in Kel'el Ware, get some first-round picks. Maybe you can rejuvenate Jaime Jaquez. Not the worst, and I think it's something we have to truly consider if we're thinking realistically of where Giannis would want to go. Because again, this is one of the options that he supposedly wants along with New York. So it's going to be one that's probably going to be in the mix. Next up is one of my personal favorite team fits for Giannis. And it's one that I haven't really seen a ton of. And that's probably because the trade itself is a little bit tougher. But I think the idea of putting Anthony Edwards and Giannis together with whatever other pieces you have left would just be a lot of fun. And so selfishly, again, this would be one of my hopes that they could convince Giannis to go to Minnesota. Would it happen? I doubt it, but we've seen crazier things this year, so you never know. In terms of the trade, there's a few different ways the Timberwolves could go. I do think Jaden McDaniels would have to be in the deal. Then the question is, do you trade Randall? Do you trade Gobert? Naz Reid, I think, would have to be in the deal. He has a player option, so realistically, this would probably be a sign and trade. The young guys would have to be in it because they don't have a ton of draft picks. So a deal like this, again, from a Bucks perspective, not a ton of like premier pieces, but I think a lot of pieces that would be interesting. I don't know if it's quite enough or if there would be quite enough like top tier assets for the Bucks to say yes, but it's something. And again, selfishly, Anthony Edwards, Giannis, that would be a great duo. Let's just be honest there. From one contending team to another, next up is the other New York team, and that's the Knicks. This one, again, would also be a very interesting trade from multiple fronts. What I have up, I think it starts with OG Anunoby. It's got to be either him or Bridges or maybe Karl Anthony Towns. But I think OG is probably the trade. I think they got to throw in Josh Hart. You got to throw in a couple young pieces in Mitchell Robinson, Miles McBride. Not a ton of draft picks left since they pretty much traded them all for Bridges. So this would pretty much be the trade. And I think really this only works from the Bucks' perspective if, like I've said, they're going to go retooling and not rebuilding. If they want to rebuild, you're not going to do it with some veterans. But if they're saying, hey, we don't have our draft picks, we still want to be competitive, a trade like this sort of makes sense. And you roll it out, you try to kind of reinvent your roster. If it doesn't work, you can trade some of these guys later on. But I think that's really the only way that this works. From the Knicks' perspective, you kind of consolidate some of your, B plus players for another A plus player. And you just hope that the trio of Brunson, Giannis, and Karl Anthony Towns works. It's New York. They're going to chase stars. I think they've chased Giannis for a while. It might be just too late, but it's Giannis. I don't think they would kind of take themselves out of it. I think it's still an option on the table. Two more teams left, and just they happen to be alphabetically the last two teams, and they are the two teams that probably can offer the most for the Bucks. And we'll debate that at the end. But two of the teams that are going to have big offers, the first one is the Thunder. And everyone says it, and it's true. If the Thunder want Giannis, and assuming Giannis wants to go there, they can offer the Bucks the most. And the trade I have up here might be way more than some of the other trades that I've shown, but I think that shows just how much the Thunder can give. Because here I have them giving up J-Dub, giving up Hartenstein, Isaiah Joe, Ousmane Dieng, 4 first-round picks. For most teams, that would be the catalog. That would be all that they can give. You are going bare for Giannis. From the Thunder's perspective, after giving up all of that, you still have SGA and Chet. You still have some draft picks left. You still have Alex Caruso. You still have Aaron Wiggins. You still have Topic. You still have the other Jalen Williams. So that's just how rich in assets the Thunder are. If they want Giannis, and again, if Giannis wants to go there, they will be able to get him. And this is another trade that if the Thunder make the finals, if they win it all, this isn't going to happen. But if they lose, and if they lose early, does Sam Presti kind of go all in? I don't necessarily know if I love just going all in if you don't have to. But when it's Giannis, there's really no better option to go all in for. Like, if you're not going to cash in all these assets for Giannis, what are you waiting for? So, will it happen? Again, this would be a long shot. But if we're talking best assets, it's going to be the Thunder. The Bucks, I think, would love this package back. And they could just ask for whatever they want. The Thunder pretty much have everything. And then the last team is the San Antonio Spurs, who, again, have a lot to offer. Maybe not quite the Thunder, but they could offer some enticing young players. Stephon Castle, who just won Rookie of the Year. Devin Vassell is a nice piece. Harrison Barnes for contracts. And then all their draft picks. And the Spurs aren't quite as rich as the Thunder are from an asset standpoint. This would be pretty much going all in, cashing in most of what they have left. But you still get to keep Jeremy Sohan and putting De'Aaron Fox, Victor Wembanyama, and Giannis together would be a really fun trio. And so again, if we're talking teams that want to go all in, this could be the Spurs' chance to go all in. And if they want to compete with Wemby, what better player than Giannis? And Giannis and Wemby might be a weird fit at times, but when they figure it out, those two together, especially defensively, you're not scoring on them inside. So it would be a lot of fun if the Spurs want him, and if the Bucks are okay with a package of some pieces and a bunch of draft picks, this would be a lot of fun. All right, so that was a lot. I know we just went through 17 potential trade options for Giannis. If I had to just rank what I think and what I think could happen or the best ones, to me, it really depends on what you mean by best. And so I'm going to break this out as we wrap up into 4 categories. If we're ranking those packages that I just gave by the best packages for the Bucks, if they're tanking, if they're like, hey, we just want to get as many young players, as many draft picks as possible, what are the best packages? I think the Thunder and the Spurs, they are the first two. I just explained that they have probably the most to give out of all these teams from just a pure asset perspective. So I think those two got to be top 2. I think the third would be the Hawks. And that might just be me. I might be just really high on Jalen Johnson and Zachary Risache. But those are 2 really enticing young pieces. So if I could get those 2 and some draft picks from the Hawks, I really like that trade. So I think that would be third for me. Fourth would be the Rockets. Whether you get Şengün, whether you get Jalen Green, maybe you can get Amen Thompson. But a lot of young pieces. If you want to kind of tank, get some young pieces, get some draft picks, I think the Rockets are up there. And then the Nets I'll put 5th because I think they could give just a ton of draft picks. So from that perspective, if the Bucks just want draft picks, the Nets are probably willing to give up the most because they have to. They just don't have the players to go along with it. If we're talking best packages from the Bucks perspective, if they want to retool, if they're like, hey, we want to turn Giannis into 3 or 4 pieces and still try to compete, I think the Knicks is really the best offer because you can turn Giannis into Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, even Miles McBride. Suddenly, those are 4 like actual rotation piece players. So if you want to retool, which I don't know why the Bucks necessarily would, unless they're just like, yeah, we don't want to tank because we don't have our picks, that might be the best offer. Some people might disagree, but 4 rotation pieces I think is good. Cavaliers I think would be next. Just getting Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen I think would be big. Pacers I have next. Getting Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard, Ben Mathurin. Again, multiple rotation players. Not a ton of like true young, like talented players, but players that can play right away. And then the last 2 I have are the Timberwolves and Grizzlies. Again, kind of similar, where not a ton of like super young players with high potential, but players that you kind of know are at least good players, whether that's Jaren Jackson Jr., Jaden McDaniels, players that can play right away and still be good. I think they are on this list. Now let's look at it from the other side. Let's look at it from Giannis' side. What are the most fun fits? And this is going to be totally subjective, but in my opinion, the most fun fits for Giannis, number one is the Spurs. I know a lot of people wouldn't like it. I would love it. I want to see him and Wemby. That would be basketball that we haven't seen before. Wemby is a player we've never seen before. Giannis is probably, quite frankly, another player we haven't seen before. Putting those two together would be a lot of fun. So if I'm talking where I want him to go, Spurs would be number one. The Pistons, I have two. I talked about it. I think him and Cade Cunningham together would be great. I would love to see them together. Pacers, I talked about, would also be a lot of fun. I have them third. Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, Giannis, same thing, would be a lot of fun. And then fifth, I'll go Rockets. I think Giannis with Ime Udoka, with the players that they have left, would be a really fun team. And I think probably is a natural fit. Again, if we're talking realistic trades, the Rockets are going to be really up there. So I think they fit on this list. And then lastly, if we rank these trades by most dangerous fits for Giannis, and I don't mean like literally dangerous that he's going to get hurt. I mean dangerous as in if he goes to this team, every other team better watch out. And this is pretty much number one is the Thunder. If the Thunder somehow get Giannis, watch out. Now, yes, they might pay 150 cents on the dollar for him, but even still, it would most likely be him, SGA, Chet, and still a lot of good role players. That is going to be dangerous. They would be immediately the best team. They pretty much already are. So, of course, they would still be the best team. Number two would be the Lakers, though, because him and Luka, no matter what you feel of Luka, those two kind of need each other. And if they kind of talk behind the scenes and they say, hey, we're both international players. We're both kind of in the same generation. I know Giannis is a few years older, but if they're both like, hey, we want to play together and we want to try to win, they're kind of what each other needs. Giannis needs a guard sometimes who can take over the scoring, and Luka needs a big guy who can defend, who can roll, who can be physical inside. That would be a really fun duo. Will it happen? Again, realistically, probably not, but if they talk about it, it could. So they would be really dangerous together. Three would be the Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Giannis. Cavaliers have been great. If they add Giannis, they would still be great. They are third on this list. Knicks would be four. Again, I talked about it. Jalen Brunson, Giannis, Karl Anthony Towns would be a great trio. And then fifth would be Timberwolves. I have the Timberwolves on this list 3 times. I do think they would be a lot of fun. And it's not a trade necessarily that I've seen a lot of. It's a trade that would be complicated. It would be a trade that I don't know if the Bucks would really do. Plus, I don't know if Giannis would want to go to Minnesota. There would be the whole thing of it wouldn't be Giannis's team because it would clearly be Anthony Edwards' team. Would he like that? I don't know. But having said all of that, it would be a lot of fun. They would be a really good team. And I would just really want to see those two together. Just see those two compete on a daily basis. So I'm going to throw them on here as well. Lots of options where Giannis could go. Again, like I said at the top, way at the beginning of this video, it could be that Giannis says, no, I want to be in Milwaukee my whole career, and this is for nothing. But I think we are finally at a point where it's actually realistic he gets traded. Now it's just a matter of where. So if you liked one of these proposals, if you have a prediction, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see kind of what people are thinking. Are we thinking Rockets? Are we thinking like the Nets or the Heat because he wants to go there? Maybe the Thunder, maybe the Spurs. There's lots of options. So I'm curious what people think. Let me know down in the comments. And again, plenty more coming. So make sure to like and subscribe. I've got lots of stuff coming. As I said, lots of NBA stuff if you like. If you like WNBA, if you like NFL, MLB, plenty more on here. So subscribe. I'm just getting started and we will see where Giannis goes in what should be a pretty eventful NBA offseason ahead.